Tonight, we are going to travel past the last major planet into the part of the solar system where the familiar map begins to fade. Neptune feels like an edge, a cold blue world so far from the sun that Earth already seems impossibly small. But beyond it, space does not end. It opens into the Kuiper Belt, a vast region of icy bodies and dwarf worlds. Then farther still, toward the boundary where the sun's influence weakens and interstellar space begins. This is not empty in a simple way. It is filled with frozen remnants, darkness, silence, and distances so large that even our fastest spacecraft become almost motionless against them. Past Neptune, the solar system stops feeling like a family of planets and starts feeling like a lonely island surrounded by an ocean we barely understand. So tonight, the question is simple. Why is the space beyond Neptune so terrifying? Before we begin tonight's journey, subscribe if you want more calm space documentaries like this. Leave a like if you enjoy deep space mysteries, and write in the comments where you are watching from. Tonight you are watching the Sleepy Cosmic Lens channel talking about why the space beyond Neptune is terrifying. Neptune is where the solar system begins to feel less like a place we understand. From Earth, the planets seem almost orderly. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune form a kind of familiar sequence in the mind, a line of worlds moving around the sun, each one farther and colder than the last, even if most people will never see them with their own eyes. The names feel known. They belong to school diagrams, space posters, telescope images, missions, discoveries, and the quiet sense that the solar system is a structured family of planets. Neptune sits at the far end of that family. It is the last major planet, the outer blue giant, the world that marks the edge of the map in many imaginations. Past Jupiter, the sun is weaker. Past Saturn, the light has already changed. Past Uranus, the solar system has become colder, slower, and more remote than the inner worlds can easily suggest. But Neptune feels different because after Neptune, the list of major planets stops. There is no next giant world waiting in the ordinary sequence. There is no familiar name that naturally follows it as a clear destination. It is so far from the sun that light, which crosses the distance from the sun to Earth in only about 8 minutes, takes hours to reach it. The planet receives only a tiny fraction of the sunlight Earth receives. From there, the sun would no longer dominate the sky in the way we know it. It would still be bright, still the central star, still the source around which everything is moving. But emotionally, it would feel diminished. Its warmth would be almost gone. Its presence would be more like a brilliant distant point than the living force that shapes Earth's days. And Neptune is still inside the known planetary system. That is the unsettling part. If Neptune already feels that remote, then the space beyond it becomes almost impossible to hold in the mind. The map continues, but it no longer continues in the comforting way people expect. There are dwarf worlds, icy bodies, strange orbits, ancient remnants, and regions so wide that even the word region begins to feel too small. There is Pluto, but Pluto is not the ending. There is the Kuiper Belt, but even that is not the last boundary. There is the heliosphere, the outer breath of the sun, but even that fades eventually into interstellar space. Neptune is not the edge of everything. It is a zone, a slow transition, a place where the sun still owns the space, but less confidently. The farther outward we go, the more the sun seems to retreat into the background. On Earth, the sun is everything. It warms the ground, drives weather, gives daylight, feeds plants, shapes seasons, and defines time. Even when clouds hide it, life is organized around it. At Neptune, sunlight is already a thin memory of what it is here. Past Neptune, that memory stretches across frozen debris and empty distance. The sun remains the center mathematically, but it becomes less central to experience. That is a frightening shift because the sun is the emotional anchor of the solar system. It is the reason the planets feel connected. It is the reason there is an inside and an outside. It is the bright middle of the story. Once the sun begins to look small, the whole idea of home begins to weaken. Earth is no longer the planet under your feet. It is somewhere far inward, buried among other worlds, invisible without instruments, carried by a tiny orbit around a star that is itself shrinking behind you. This is another reason the region is unsettling. The closer solar system has a kind of visual order. The planets may differ enormously, but their names and orbits create a mental pattern. Beyond Neptune, the pattern becomes less tidy. The space is populated by objects that do not feel like chapters in a simple list. They are remnants, fragments, survivors, displaced worlds, icy shapes moving in deep cold. The farther we look, the more the solar system stops resembling a classroom diagram and starts resembling the aftermath of an ancient construction site. In space, beyond can mean a distance that takes decades to cross. A spacecraft does not pass Neptune and immediately reach a dramatic new place. It enters a colder, slower, more scattered environment where the next object may be unimaginably far away, where the sun's light continues to weaken, and where the silence becomes less like the quiet between planets and more like the beginning of the space between stars. The journey does not become terrifying because something suddenly appears. It becomes terrifying because almost nothing does. The planets gave structure. Neptune is the last major structure. After that, the mind has to face distance more directly. This is why the region beyond Neptune can feel more terrifying than the planets themselves. Jupiter is monstrous, but it is a destination. Saturn is alien, but it is a world with rings and moons. Neptune is distant, but still a planet with a name, a disk, weather, and orbit. But the space beyond Neptune is not one object. It is a vastness. It does not give the mind a single image. It gives a feeling, cold, old, wide, dark, and almost untouched. A terrifying distance has to be felt. To feel it, we have to slow down and imagine leaving Neptune behind. The blue planet grows smaller behind the spacecraft. Its moons become points. The sun remains ahead or behind, depending on the path. But either way, it is no longer the commanding presence it once was. The familiar planetary sequence is now inward. Every major planet humanity knows is behind you. Not behind in the way a city is behind a traveler, but behind across billions of kilometers of darkness. Ahead, there is no welcoming next planet. There are only scattered remnants and the long, fading edge of the sun's domain. That is what makes Neptune such a powerful threshold. It tells us that the solar system is not just the planets. The planets are the bright inner architecture. Beyond them is the surrounding cold, the leftover material, the distant reservoirs, the boundary zones, and the beginning of the interstellar environment. The planets are the part we learned first because they are easier to name, but they are not the whole story. Past Neptune, the solar system becomes less like a family portrait and more like a haunted estate whose outer grounds disappear into fog. That image is not literal, but it fits the feeling. The inner rooms are known, the lights are on, the names are familiar. Then we walk outward and the buildings thin out. The paths become harder to see. The landscape grows colder. The boundary is somewhere ahead, but it is not marked by a fence. It is spread across distances so enormous that a human life barely registers against them. Neptune is the last lamp on the road. Beyond it, the dark is not empty enough to ignore and not full enough to comfort. That balance is deeply unsettling. If the space beyond Neptune were completely empty, it might be easier to imagine as a void. If it were crowded with planets, it might feel like another neighborhood. Instead, it is sparsely populated by ancient bodies, many of them dark, icy, and difficult to see. They do not create a comforting map. They create hints, dwarf worlds, comet-like bodies, long orbits, objects that feel like clues from the solar system's formation, scattered across a region too large to feel familiar. The outer solar system is not a blank, it is a whisper. And whispers can be more frightening than silence because they suggest that something is there, but not enough for the mind to settle. Every discovery beyond Neptune has expanded the sense of how large and strange the solar system really is. Pluto was once treated as the outer planet, then became part of a broader population. Other distant bodies appeared. The Kuiper Belt became real in the scientific imagination. The idea of the solar system's edge moved outward, then outward again. The more we learned, the less Neptune felt like an ending. Knowledge did not shrink the darkness. It gave the darkness structure. That may be even more disturbing. A mystery without shape can be dismissed. A mystery with structure begins to surround you. Once we know there are icy worlds beyond Neptune, we have to imagine them moving silently in the cold. Once we know there are distant reservoirs of comets, we have to imagine the sun's influence reaching much farther than the planets. Once we know spacecraft can cross the heliopause, We have to imagine a boundary where the sun's protective bubble gives way to the medium between stars. Each discovery extends the journey. Each extension makes home feel smaller. This is the emotional core of the space beyond Neptune. It makes the solar system feel both larger and lonelier. Larger because the planets are only the beginning of the sun's territory. Lonelier because the territory beyond them is not filled with humanly meaningful places. There may be countless objects, but they are not cities, oceans, forests, skies, or worlds where a person could step outside and belong. They are frozen bodies in deep time, moving under a faint sun. The farther out we go, the less the solar system feels made of worlds. It feels made of distances. Distances between planets, distances between icy bodies, distances between spacecraft and home, distances between human imagination and the real scale of space. Beyond Neptune, distance becomes the main character. It is not a background measurement. It is the thing that dominates everything. How long light takes, how weak the sun becomes, how slowly spacecraft move compared with the vastness, how far any rescue would be, how far Earth has fallen behind. That is why the terror is quiet. Nothing needs to happen. You only need to keep going. Every hour, the sun gets slightly farther. Every day, Earth becomes more unreachable. Every year, the planetary system becomes more like a memory. The spacecraft may still be moving quickly by human standards, but against the outer solar system, it feels slow. The journey stretches into years, then decades. A human life becomes too short to make the distance feel complete. This is where space stops being an adventure and becomes a scale problem. The mind can understand danger. It struggles with scale. Neptune then is not terrifying only because it is far away. It is terrifying because it is the last point where the solar system still feels like the solar system most people know. After Neptune, the story changes from planets to remnants, from destinations to regions, from bright maps to dim boundaries. The viewer begins to understand that the familiar solar system is only the central island, and that the island is surrounded by a cold, dark ocean that remains part of our cosmic home, but not a home in any human sense. That ocean has names: Kuiper Belt, scattered disk, heliosphere, heliopause, interstellar space, Oort cloud. But names do not make it comfortable. Names are handles placed on something much larger than the mind can hold. They let us speak about the outer darkness, but they do not tame it. The same is true of Neptune. The name makes the last planet feel familiar, but familiarity fades when we remember what lies beyond it. A name on a map is not the same as a place where life can feel safe. The more carefully we think about it, the more Neptune becomes a warning. Not a warning that something evil waits beyond it, but a warning that the universe does not become understandable just because we have labeled its parts. Past Neptune, the map continues into territory that is real, scientifically rich, and deeply important, but emotionally difficult. It asks us to imagine a solar system without the comfort of the planets. It asks us to imagine the sun as a distant star. It asks us to imagine spacecraft drifting for decades through regions where the next discovery may be a tiny frozen world in the dark. It asks us to imagine that our entire planetary neighborhood is far smaller than the space surrounding it, and that is why the journey has to begin here, at the last major planet before the darkness. Neptune is beautiful, remote, and familiar enough to recognize. It is the final blue marker in the old planetary sequence. But when we move past it, we are no longer simply traveling to the next world. We are entering the cold outer architecture of the solar system, where the planets give way to frozen remnants and the sun's warm story begins to fade. And beyond that last blue world, the first great region waiting in the dark is the Kuiper Belt. It is tempting to imagine the space after Neptune as empty, a final planet, then darkness, a blue disk fading behind a spacecraft, then a long nothing between the solar system and the stars. That picture is simple, and in one sense it feels right because the outer solar system is unimaginably sparse. But it is also wrong in a way that makes the region more unsettling. Neptune is not followed by a clean void. It is followed by a vast, cold population of ancient bodies, most of them small, most of them dark, many of them still carrying the memory of the solar system's beginning. The Kuiper Belt is not a planet. It is not a single destination. That is part of what makes it so haunting. The inner solar system has worlds that feel finished. Earth is alive. Mars is scarred. Jupiter is enormous, Saturn is ringed, Neptune is blue and remote. They feel like completed chapters, even though every one of them is still changing in its own way. But the Kuiper Belt feels more like a preserved construction site. It is full of material that did not gather into one major world, full of icy bodies that survived in the cold instead of being swallowed, ejected, or transformed. To travel there is to move into the debris of creation. Not debris in the ordinary sense, like wreckage after a recent disaster, but debris in deep time. These objects have existed for billions of years, moving slowly through a cold region where sunlight is weak and change can be almost unimaginably slow. On Earth, mountains erode, oceans move, weather reshapes landscapes, and life covers surfaces with motion and noise. In the Kuiper Belt, many objects may remain frozen records, altered by impacts, radiation, and time, but still preserving ancient chemistry from an era when the planets were still forming. That makes the region scientifically precious. It also makes it feel strangely dead. That is one of the most important ideas to understand. For a long time, Pluto held a special place in the human imagination. It was the 9th planet, the little distant world at the edge of the map, the final name children learned in the planetary sequence. Even after its reclassification, Pluto still feels emotionally powerful because it represents remoteness. It is small, cold, strange, beloved, and lonely. But the more we learned, the clearer it became that Pluto was not alone. Pluto is not the border. It is one member of a much larger population. That realization changes the outer solar system. If Pluto were the final object, the map would feel easier. There would be planets, then Pluto, then the end. But the Kuiper Belt breaks that simplicity. Pluto becomes not the last world, but a doorway into a broader region of similar bodies. Other dwarf worlds exist beyond Neptune. Other icy objects follow their own paths. The outer edge of the familiar system becomes a crowd of faint, frozen things, too small or too far to dominate the imagination, but too real to ignore. This is more frightening than a single lonely planet. A lonely planet can be pictured. A crowd of hidden objects is harder to picture. They are present but hidden. That hiddenness gives the Kuiper Belt its strange power. It has been there all along, surrounding the known planets, while human beings spent most of history unaware of its true scale. Even after telescopes revealed more and more of the solar system, the region beyond Neptune remained mostly a blank in the mind. We had the last planet. We had Pluto. We had guesses. Then the darkness began to fill with objects. The Kuiper Belt contains countless objects, and yet it would feel almost empty to travel through. An icy body in the Kuiper Belt may have traveled around the sun for billions of years without ever approaching another large object closely. It may see the sun as a distant light and the planets as far inward rumors of gravity. It may rotate slowly in darkness, carrying craters, frozen surfaces, reddish organic material, exposed ice, or strange shapes that no human eye has ever seen up close. It may be one of countless objects and still exist in nearly total isolation, a belt made of loneliness. That is the mood of the region. The New Horizons spacecraft gave humanity a brief and powerful glimpse of this world beyond Neptune when it flew past Pluto in 2015 and later visited Ouralkoth, a small Kuiper Belt object much farther out. Those encounters mattered because they turned distant points into places. Pluto became a world with mountains, plains, haze, glaciers, and complexity. Ouralkoth became a strange, ancient object with a shape that seemed to preserve a gentle joining from the early days of planet formation. For a moment, the darkness beyond Neptune had texture. The farther we look, the more there is to explain. That is one of the quiet fears of astronomy. Discovery does not simply remove mystery. Often it multiplies it. Pluto was supposed to be simple compared with the larger planets, but it turned out to be complex. Ouralkoth was supposed to be a small remnant, but it revealed a preserved history that raised new questions. The Kuiper Belt was once only a predicted region of icy debris, but now it is a real frontier of objects with different colors, sizes, orbits, surfaces, and pasts. That is another reason the region is frightening. We are creatures of short cycles, days, months, years, lifetimes. In the Kuiper Belt, motion continues, but it does so at scales that make human time feel thin. A world may complete one journey around the sun while generations on Earth are born, live, and die. A spacecraft sent there may take years or decades to arrive and then pass its target in a matter of hours. The work of an entire mission becomes a brief encounter with an object that has waited billions of years. The mismatch is enormous. Human urgency meets geological patience. That mismatch gives the outer solar system its dreamlike calm. Nothing seems to be happening, yet everything is moving. Nothing appears alive, yet the region carries the deep history of planetary formation. Nothing feels nearby, yet all of it is still tied to the sun. The Kuiper Belt is not outside the solar system. It is part of it, but it belongs to a part of the system where the normal emotional language of planets stops working. A survivor. A piece of the beginning. The word graveyard can fit, but only partly. The Kuiper Belt is not a place where dead things were buried after living. It is more like a place where possible worlds remained unfinished. Some objects may have been prevented from growing by Neptune's gravitational influence. Others may have been scattered into different regions. Some may be fragments of larger stories. The graveyard feeling comes from imagining all the planetary material that never became something more familiar. It is not a cemetery of life. It is a cemetery of possibility. This connects to a deeper thought. The solar system is not mostly familiar worlds. It is mostly distance, cold, and ancient material that does not care about life. And yet it is beautiful. Not beautiful in the warm way Earth is beautiful. Beautiful in the way a fossil is beautiful. Beautiful because it reveals how large the story is. A small Kuiper Belt object may look unimpressive from far away, but it can hold information older than any rock a human has touched on Earth's surface. It can tell us how material clumped together, how ices behaved in the early solar system, how Neptune shaped the outer regions, and how the Sun's family extended far beyond the major planets. It is frightening because it is cold and remote. But it is also valuable because it is cold and remote. The very thing that makes it hostile makes it preserved. That is the strange respect the Kuiper Belt demands. It is not a place humans could ever feel safe in. But it is a place that can teach us who we are, not by welcoming us, but by showing us the leftovers around our home system. The planets are not floating in a simple empty shell. They are surrounded by evidence. Beyond Neptune lies a cold archive, a vast field of objects that survived the chaos of formation and still move silently under the sun's weakening light. A spacecraft passing through would not feel surrounded by history. It would feel surrounded by nothing. That is the terror of scale again. The archive is real, but it is spread across so much distance that the human senses would experience it as emptiness. A mission team on Earth may know the region is populated. Instruments may detect objects. Telescopes may catalog them. Models may describe their distributions. But a traveler inside the darkness would mostly see stars, a distant sun, and black space. The knowledge of the region's richness would not make the view feel full. The Kuiper Belt is intellectually crowded and visually lonely. That contrast may define the outer solar system. What science knows and what a person would feel are not always the same. Science can say this region contains many icy bodies. A human imagination tries to stand there and feels the terrible distance between them. Science can say Pluto is part of a population. Emotion still feels its loneliness. Science can say these objects preserve ancient material. The mind still sees dark ice moving through cold. Both truths matter. The Kuiper Belt is full. The Kuiper Belt is empty. It depends on whether we measure by objects or by experience. For a calm documentary, that tension is powerful because it lets the fear stay quiet. There is no need to invent monsters beyond Neptune. The real thing is enough. Ancient bodies moving silently, faint sunlight, Pluto no longer alone, a region so large that a spacecraft can spend years crossing toward a target and still see almost nothing on the way. A cosmic graveyard that is not truly dead because it continues to move, preserve, and reveal. The fear is not that something is hiding there to attack us. The fear is that the region is so vast and cold that human life feels irrelevant inside it. That is what Neptune hides from the familiar map. When Neptune is treated as the final planet, the solar system seems to have an edge. But the Kuiper Belt proves that the edge is not simple. It is layered. It contains old material, strange worlds, and distances that widen the story. It pushes the boundary outward and makes the solar system feel less like a room with walls and more like a fading glow surrounded by dark terrain. Pluto helped reveal that. For generations, Pluto carried the emotional weight of the edge. It was small, remote, and distant enough to become a symbol of loneliness. But when we learned that Pluto belonged to a broader region, the loneliness changed shape. Pluto became less alone, but the solar system became larger, stranger, and less tidy. The comfort of a final planet was replaced by the unease of a population. That is a strange kind of loss. We lost a simple ending. We gained a darker frontier. The Kuiper Belt is that frontier. Not the end of the sun's influence, not the beginning of the stars, but the first great outer region where the familiar planetary order dissolves. It is filled with material that may never become anything warm or alive. It is a place of faint light, slow orbits, ancient ice, and unanswered questions. It is part of our solar system, yet it feels already half removed from the world we know. Past Neptune, the sun still rules, but it rules over darkness. That thought should stay with us as the journey continues. The Kuiper Belt is not only a place beyond a planet, it is a change in the emotional meaning of distance. It tells us that the solar system is much larger than the bright sequence of major worlds and much colder than our diagrams usually admit. It shows that beyond the last blue planet, there are not just stars waiting in the distance. There are old, frozen bodies drifting through a darkness that has belonged to the sun since the beginning. And among those bodies, one world became so famous that for a long time, people mistook it for the edge itself. Pluto is one of the strangest names in the human map of space. For most of the 20th century, it carried the emotional weight of the farthest planet. It was small, cold, distant, and lonely, orbiting so far from the sun that it seemed almost like the final punctuation mark at the end of the solar system. Children learned its name after Neptune. Diagrams placed it at the edge. It became a symbol of distance in a way that was larger than its size. Even people who knew almost nothing about astronomy knew Pluto was far away. That simple idea was powerful. The planets began near the sun and ended with Pluto. The end of the map became a doorway. This is why Pluto matters so much to a journey beyond Neptune. It is not terrifying because it is dangerous in some obvious, violent way. It is terrifying because it teaches us that the edge we thought we understood was never the edge at all. A world that once felt like the final marker turned out to be a signpost inside a larger region. The last object became one object. The boundary became a population. The clean ending became a much wider darkness. Pluto made the solar system feel smaller. It also made it feel larger. Smaller because our sense of the system shrank when the outer edge moved inward. Larger because the system's true size became harder to grasp. Pluto is like a stone that marks a path, not a wall. It shows the way into a territory that continues beyond the stone, but it does not stop the traveler. That is a frightening feeling, not because the stone is dangerous, but because it reveals that the path goes on. Pluto's surface is not terrifying in the same way a black hole is terrifying or in the way a supernova is terrifying. Its fear is quieter. It is the fear of discovering that something you treated as simple is not simple at all. From far away, Pluto was a point. Up close, it was a world. And beyond it are countless other points still waiting in the dark. Each one perhaps dull, perhaps strange, perhaps ancient, perhaps holding clues to events that shaped the solar system before Earth became alive. This is how the outer darkness becomes layered. A dot becomes a world becomes a member of a population becomes a frontier. For decades, Pluto felt like the edge because humans needed an edge. We wanted the solar system to have a final world, a last stone before the stars. Pluto was small enough and far enough to play that role beautifully. It felt like a lonely guardian of the outer dark, but loneliness can be misleading. Pluto was never alone in the way people imagined. It was only the first of its kind to become famous. The map changed. That is the deeper lesson. Pluto teaches us that the terror of space is not only distance, but revision. The universe keeps revising the maps we build. We think we know where the edges are, and then the edges move. We think one object is alone, and then we discover a population. We think a point is simple, and then a spacecraft reveals a world. We think a name completes the list, and then the list becomes only one layer of a much larger structure. Past Neptune, every certainty becomes provisional. Pluto is the symbol of that. This makes Pluto more interesting than a simple planet or dwarf planet argument. The classification debate can distract from the larger feeling. What matters for this journey is not the label alone, but what the label change revealed. Pluto belongs to a broader story of icy objects beyond Neptune. It is one world in a region that refuses to fit the old planetary sequence. That is what makes it powerful. It forces the mind to abandon the idea that the solar system is only a row of major planets. It is more like a bright inner system surrounded by dark outer memory. The truth is stranger, more dynamic, and much less comforting. The outer solar system is shaped by gravitational histories that are not obvious from a simple poster. Neptune's gravity influenced the Kuiper Belt. Planets may have migrated in the early solar system. Small bodies were scattered, trapped, preserved, and disturbed. Pluto's orbit is a clue to that history. It is not just a small world at the end. It is a survivor of a complicated past. Survivors carry stories. That story is written not in words, but in orbit. Ice, craters, surface color, atmosphere, and the relationship with Charon. Pluto and Charon are especially strange because Charon is so large compared with Pluto that the two worlds almost feel like a double system. They turn toward each other with the same faces locked across space, orbiting a common center of mass that lies outside Pluto itself. In the outer darkness, two frozen worlds keep each other company in a silence that has lasted for billions of years. Not sentimental, not dramatic, but quietly human in the way the mind responds to it. A pair of worlds turning together in the dark, far beyond Neptune, under a small sun, surrounded by the wider Kuiper Belt. It is beautiful. It is also a reminder of how little warmth is needed for motion to continue. The solar system does not have to be lively to be active. It can be cold, silent, and still full of relationships. Pluto is dead to human life, but it is not dull. That is part of the terror beyond Neptune. The region does not become frightening by being featureless. It becomes frightening by being full of things that are real but unreachable, complex but frozen, moving but silent. Pluto gives us just enough detail to make the darkness beyond it feel more serious. If we had never seen Pluto up close, it might remain only a symbolic dot. Seeing it made it a place, and making it a place made the surrounding unknown harder to ignore. How many other small worlds are out there with surfaces no human has seen clearly? How many objects preserve ancient material in forms we do not yet understand? How many bodies have moons, strange shapes, unexpected chemistry, or histories tied to planetary migration? How much of the solar system exists beyond the list most people can name? The answer is not comforting. A great deal of it. The planets dominate attention because they are large and beautiful. But by number, the solar system contains countless smaller bodies, asteroids, comets, icy objects, dwarf worlds, fragments, and dust. The major planets are the visible architecture, but not the full inventory. Pluto's story reveals that the outer solar system is not an empty room after the main furniture ends. It is a dim storage of ancient material, some of it still waiting to be understood. That storage may extend our sense of home. It may also make home feel stranger. If Pluto is not the edge, then the solar system is not the tidy neighborhood our minds prefer. It is a layered system with familiar planets at its center, outer belts of old material, distant boundary regions, and perhaps an enormous comet reservoir far beyond what any spacecraft has reached. The more we follow the map outward, the less it resembles the simple childhood version. Pluto is the moment that old version begins to dissolve. It does not dissolve violently. It dissolves quietly. A label changes. A spacecraft flies by. A new image appears. A tiny world becomes complex. A final planet becomes one member of a dark population. The emotional effect is slow but deep. We begin to understand that the solar system was never small enough to fit the way we first learned it. It was simplified so the mind could begin. Then the real structure waited beyond that simplification. Pluto is where many people first feel the discomfort of that difference between the map and the territory. The map said edge. The territory said continue. That word continue is the frightening one because beyond Pluto there is more. Beyond the famous dwarf world are other distant objects. Beyond the densest parts of the Kuiper Belt are scattered bodies on elongated orbits. Beyond the known outer populations, the sun's influence keeps stretching toward regions that become even harder to observe. Pluto was not the conclusion. It was a reminder that conclusions in space are often only pauses in human knowledge. We stop when our instruments stop. The universe does not. This is why a journey beyond Neptune has to pass through Pluto emotionally, even if not physically. Pluto carries the old idea of the edge, and losing that edge prepares the mind for the larger darkness. We cannot understand the terror of the outer solar system if we keep imagining a neat endpoint. We have to let Pluto become what it really is, a real, strange, beautiful, frozen world inside a broader field of ancient bodies. That shift is unsettling because it removes comfort, but it also deepens wonder. The two feelings can exist together. Pluto can be beloved and frightening. It can be small and important. It can lose planet status and gain context. It can feel lonely while belonging to a population. It can mark the end of an old mental map and the beginning of a truer one. In that sense, Pluto is not diminished by not being the edge. It becomes more interesting because it reveals what the edge actually is. Not a line, but a region. Not a single world, but a slow fading of familiarity. And this may be closer to how the universe works in general. Boundaries are rarely as clean as human imagination wants them to be. Atmospheres fade into space. Planetary rings thin into dust. Stellar influence stretches outward until it blends with the interstellar medium. Solar systems do not end like rooms with walls. They fade, scatter, and overlap with larger environments. Pluto teaches that lesson gently by refusing to be the final period. It is a comma in the darkness. The sentence goes on. That is the best way to feel it. If Neptune is the last major planet, Pluto is the place where the old story hesitates. It tells us that there is still something out here, something cold and strange and beautiful, but not enough to return to the comfort of the planetary sequence. It is familiar enough to name and imagine, but unfamiliar enough to make the map feel unstable. It belongs to the solar system, and yet points beyond the solar system, a world at the edge of the old edge. That is why Pluto is not simply a topic in the journey beyond Neptune. It is a psychological turning point. Before Pluto, the solar system can still feel like a sequence. After Pluto, it becomes a field. Before Pluto, the mind can pretend there is a final known world. After Pluto, the mind has to accept that known worlds continue into darkness, becoming smaller, colder, harder to see, and harder to place in a comforting order. The terror is not that Pluto is hostile. The terror is that Pluto is not alone. And if the most famous distant world is not alone, then the unknown beyond it becomes larger than the object itself. Pluto becomes a lantern that lights up just enough of the dark to show that there is more dark behind it. That may be why its images are so powerful. They do not close the story. They open it. They turn a point into a landscape and then leave the viewer wondering how many other landscapes are still hidden. A true edge would have been simpler. A lonely Pluto at the end of everything would have made the solar system feel colder but cleaner. It would have been easy to imagine. Here is the last world, and beyond it, the stars. Instead, the real picture is messier, older, and more haunting. Pluto is part of a belt. The belt is part of a broader outer architecture. The outer architecture leads toward boundaries where the sun's influence fades. The whole system is wrapped in distance. The last planet was not the last world. The famous world was not the edge. That realization changes the emotional scale of the solar system. Earth becomes not only far from Neptune, but far inside a system whose outer story is much larger than the planets. The sun becomes not only the center of 8 planets, but the center of a vast family of remnants and boundary regions. The solar system becomes less like a set of worlds and more like a long gradient from warmth to dark. Pluto sits along that gradient, cold, bright enough to see through instruments, complex enough to surprise us, and distant enough to humble us. It reminds us that the outer solar system is not empty in a comforting way. It is inhabited by ancient bodies that do not make the darkness less dark. They make it deeper. Each discovery beyond Neptune says the same thing in a different form. The map continues, but not toward comfort. It continues toward scale, cold, silence, and the fading of the sun as an emotional presence. Pluto was the world that taught us the edge was an illusion, and once that illusion is gone, the sun itself begins to feel different, not as a warm center, but as a distant star behind us. That may be one of the most unsettling changes in the journey beyond Neptune. On Earth, the sun does not feel like a distant star. It feels like the center of life. It rises and sets over oceans, forests, cities, deserts, mountains, and fields. It warms skin, lights rooms, grows crops, drives weather, marks time, and gives the sky its daily rhythm. Even when people do not think about it, the sun is built into almost every ordinary human experience. Morning means sunlight, summer means longer warmth, shadows mean direction, clouds mean the sun is hidden, not absent. The sun is so familiar that it almost stops feeling astronomical. It becomes part of home. That familiarity changes when you move far enough outward. Beyond Neptune, the sun is still there, still the center, still the source of light and gravity. But it no longer feels like the sun of human experience. It feels like a star, a bright one, yes, but just one among many. Its light no longer warms. Its presence no longer defines the day. A traveler could look at it and recognize it, but they could not feel it. They would know that the same star shines on Earth, their home. But from that distance, the connection would be almost mathematical. It would be a relationship of position, not feeling. That realization is quiet but deep. It was warm for us because Earth orbits in the right place. That is a difficult thing to feel. We know it intellectually, but the body does not know it. The body grew under a sky where sunlight means life. Human instincts were shaped on a planet where daylight arrives with heat, color, activity, and safety. For most of human history, the sun was the great giver, the visible force that separated night from day and winter from spring. To imagine the sun as a small light far behind you is to imagine being removed from the environment that made human meaning possible. Past Neptune, the sun no longer behaves like the sun of human experience. A star without closeness. The outer solar system is full of that kind of contradiction. Objects can be sunlit and still frozen. A surface can be visible and still feel buried in darkness. A world can orbit the sun and still seem almost outside the sun's living presence. Pluto, Kuiper Belt objects, and farther scattered bodies are not completely cut off from the star, but the connection is stretched thin across billions of kilometers. The sun reaches them, but faintly, like a voice heard through a wall. On Earth, sunlight arrives as an environment. Beyond Neptune, sunlight arrives as evidence that the sun is still there, evidence that the object still belongs to the solar system. A spacecraft traveling outward would experience this change gradually. There would be no moment when the sun suddenly turns into a star. It would shrink slowly, day after day, year after year. At first, leaving Earth, the sun still feels dominant. At Mars, it is weaker but familiar. At Jupiter, it is farther but still unmistakably central. At Saturn, the light is reduced, but the planet and its rings still glow beautifully under it. At Uranus and Neptune, the sun has become far smaller, and beyond Neptune, the old emotional scale collapses. The sun is no longer a sky, it is a direction. Beyond Neptune, objects still belong physically to the solar system, but they do not feel emotionally held by the sun. The sun's gravitational influence continues, but its warmth does not reach in the same way. Its presence becomes more like a memory than a force. That is a strange thing to say about a star, the star at the center of everything. But distance changes meaning. In the outer solar system, the sun is not gone. It is not even faint in the absolute sense. It is just far enough to make warmth feel theoretical. This makes Earth feel fragile in a new way. The outer solar system is still the sun's domain, but it is not the sun's garden. It is not an atmosphere of gas, but an emotional atmosphere of suspended time. The sun's weakness helps create that feeling. In the inner solar system, sunlight drives action. It powers weather, evaporation, seasons, and biological cycles. In the outer regions, the same sunlight becomes too faint to create familiar change. Motion still happens. Orbits continue. Impacts occur. Surfaces evolve slowly. But the urgent rhythm of sunlit life is gone. The sun no longer feels like a clock that living things obey. It feels like a distant signal from a warmer age, a small light over a frozen archive. The human mind struggles with that because we do not normally connect sunlight with cold. We think of sunlight as warmth, even when winter air is sharp. We think of daylight as energy, but But the outer solar system separates light from comfort. It reveals that brightness is not enough. A frozen body can sit in sunlight for billions of years and remain utterly hostile. The sun can shine and still fail to make a place livable. That may be more frightening than total darkness. In total darkness, you understand absence. In faint sunlight, you see the ghost of what could have been comfort. The sun becomes a memory with direction. Look toward it, and you look toward home. Look away, and you look toward interstellar darkness. That simple orientation may become psychologically powerful. In the inner solar system, the sun is everywhere in the experience of day. Beyond Neptune, it becomes a specific point you can face or turn away from. It no longer surrounds your sense of time. It no longer fills the environment. It becomes one light among the stars. Brighter than the others, yes, but still small enough to make the mind uneasy. The center has become a dot. This is the opposite of how human beings learn the universe. We begin with Earth underfoot and the sun above us. Then we learn Earth orbits the sun. Then we learn the sun is one star in the Milky Way. But emotionally, the sun remains special because it is our star. A journey beyond Neptune forces that emotional specialness to weaken. From far enough away, the sun no longer looks like the ruler of the sky. It becomes a local star seen from the outskirts of its own system. That perspective is humbling. It means even the center is only central from the inside. From beyond Neptune, the solar system begins to look like a small illuminated region inside a much larger galactic environment. The planets are behind you. The sun is behind you. Ahead is not another familiar planetary system waiting nearby, but the immense space between stars. The sun's light may still be the strongest personal symbol of home, but it is no longer enough to make the darkness feel owned. The further you travel, the more the sun becomes a clue that you came from somewhere small. That is terrifying because it changes the scale of identity. On Earth, we think of ourselves as living under the sun. In the outer solar system, a traveler might feel like they have left the sun behind even while still gravitationally connected to it. The system becomes stretched across such distance that belonging no longer feels warm. It becomes mathematical, orbital, faint. A number can say you are still inside the solar system. A feeling can say you are already leaving. This split between fact and feeling is important. Scientifically, the sun's influence extends far beyond Neptune, far beyond Pluto, out toward the heliosphere, and perhaps through the distant Oort cloud in gravitational terms. But emotionally, the solar system many people imagine ends when the major planets end. After that, every step outward feels like a movement away from the family of worlds and into the lonely outer estate of the sun. The sun remains present, but it no longer fills the story. It becomes the last light behind you, and even that light has limits. Eventually, if the journey continues far enough, the solar wind weakens against the interstellar medium. The sun's magnetic bubble has an edge-like transition. Space begins to be shaped less by our star and more by the environment between stars. The details are complex, but the emotional meaning is clear. Even the sun has a reach, and that reach is not infinite. The star that feels all-powerful from Earth is not all-powerful in the galaxy. It protects a bubble. Beyond that bubble, the galaxy begins. This makes the sun feel both greater and smaller. Greater because its influence stretches vastly farther than the planets most people know. Smaller because even that enormous influence is only a pocket inside the Milky Way. The solar system is not a kingdom with a hard wall. It is a bubble of one star's presence, surrounded by the wider interstellar sea. Beyond Neptune, that bubble becomes easier to imagine because the major planets no longer distract us. We begin to sense the edge of the sun's environment, not immediately, not cleanly, but slowly. The fading sun is the emotional thread that connects every later part of the journey. The Kuiper Belt is dim because the sun is far. Pluto is cold because the sun is weak. The heliopause matters because the sun's wind eventually yields. Interstellar space is frightening because the sun's bubble no longer fully contains the environment. The Oort cloud, if imagined far enough out, belongs to the sun by gravity more than by warmth. Every outer region is defined by what remains of the sun and what no longer remains. Beyond Neptune, the sun becomes a question. How far does home reach? How far can one star's influence go before it becomes only a memory? That question is not only scientific, it is emotional. Because humans build their sense of place around centers. A home has a center. A city has a center. A country has a capital. A sky has a sun. When the center shrinks behind you, the mind feels the loss of orientation. It can still navigate, but navigation is not the same as comfort. Knowing where the sun is does not make its warmth return. The outer solar system is where direction replaces presence. The sun no longer fills your day, it only tells you which way the day used to be. That sentence captures the strange fear of the region. The farther you go, the more daylight becomes historical. It comes from the same star that lights Earth, but it arrives too weak to create an Earth-like world. It says that the inner solar system exists somewhere behind you, but it does not bring that world with it. Light travels, comfort does not. This is why the sun's fading can feel more terrifying than darkness itself. Darkness is simple, faint sunlight is complicated. It carries a connection, but the connection is insufficient. It reminds you of home while proving you are no longer within home's warmth. It is like seeing a lighthouse so far away that it cannot guide you back in any practical sense, only remind you that shore exists. Past Neptune, the sun becomes that lighthouse, bright enough to remember, too far to save. Of course, no human has traveled there. Our sense of this journey comes through spacecraft, instruments, images, physics, and imagination. But the emotional truth remains powerful. Voyager and New Horizons have shown that machines can pass through these regions, carrying human-made objects farther than any person has gone. Their cameras and sensors extend our senses outward, and through them we can begin to feel what the solar system becomes when the sun's light is no longer the environment but the last trace of one. That is why these spacecraft feel lonely. They are still connected to the sun, but increasingly distant from the world that built them. They carry human intention into a region where the sun is not absent but diminished. They do not see sunrise in the human sense. They do not feel warmth. They move through a system where distance has transformed the central star into a point of origin rather than a source of comfort. The sun behind them is not gone, but the meaning of the sun has changed. This change also makes Earth feel almost impossibly specific. Earth exists where sunlight is strong enough but not too strong, where an atmosphere spreads and softens it, where water can remain liquid, where geology and chemistry have kept a habitable surface over deep time. Beyond Neptune, the same sun reveals the opposite. Most of its domain is not like Earth at all. Most of the solar system does not live in the warm zone of human comfort. Most of it is cold, dim, airless, or unreachable. The star that gives us life also illuminates a vast amount of lifelessness. That contrast is quietly devastating. It means the sun is not a universal promise. It is a local opportunity. Earth happens to be in the region where that opportunity became life. Farther out, sunlight becomes too weak to do the same work. It reaches the Kuiper Belt, Pluto, scattered objects and distant bodies, but it arrives like a memory of a fire, not the fire itself. And if the sun can become weak inside its own system, then the universe beyond it becomes even stranger. Every star has its own reach. Every warmth has a limit. Every planetary system fades outward into darkness. Neptune is the point where that fading becomes emotionally visible. The journey through the planets has already shown distance, but beyond Neptune, the distance begins to remove the sun from its human role. It is no longer the parent of daylight. It becomes a star you are leaving behind. That shift prepares the mind for the next terror, not merely cold, but scale. Because once the sun is small, distance stops being an abstract number. It becomes the environment itself. And as the sun shrinks into a distant star behind the journey, the spaces between objects begin to stop making sense at all. Distance is the real darkness beyond Neptune. Not darkness as the absence of light, because there is still sunlight, still stars, still faint reflected glimmers from ancient ice. The deeper darkness is scale. It is the discovery that the spaces between things become so wide that the human mind can no longer treat them as ordinary emptiness. They are not gaps on a map. They are environments in their own right, long stretches of nothing that would take machines years to cross and human lives to truly feel. Inside the inner solar system, distance already seems enormous. The moon is far enough that only a handful of human missions have reached it. Mars is far enough that every journey there becomes a major event. Jupiter is so distant that spacecraft spend years falling outward through gravity and darkness before reaching it. But the inner and middle solar systems still give us objects that feel like milestones. There is always another planet to name, another target to imagine, another place that helps the mind measure the road. Past Neptune, the milestones thin out. Human beings are built for distances that bodies can cross, or at least imagine crossing. A walk across a room, a drive between cities, a flight across an ocean, a journey around Earth. Even those can feel large, but they belong to a world of landscapes, roads, horizons, and time measured in hours or days. Space distances break that relationship. They do not simply become longer versions of Earth distances. They become something else. They become emptiness stretched into time. A distance beyond Neptune is not just a distance. It is years of travel. It is decades of signal delay in the emotional sense, even if radio waves still move at light speed. It is a mission that may outlive the people who planned it. It is a spacecraft moving through darkness while generations on Earth change. Cities grow, children are born, and the machine continues outward, barely advancing compared with the vastness ahead. On Earth, travel changes the view constantly. Beyond Neptune, travel may change almost nothing for a long time. That makes distance feel almost oppressive. Not because it presses physically, but because it erases drama. Human stories depend on events, places, changes, encounters, and visible progress. The outer solar system does not care about narrative. It can let a spacecraft move for years between meaningful moments. It can turn an extraordinary velocity into a quiet line on a tracking screen. It can make one of humanity's greatest machines seem small, patient, and alone. The distance becomes larger than achievement. That is a difficult thing for the human mind to accept. We are used to technology reducing distance. Cars, aircraft, satellites, fiber optic cables, rockets, and radio signals have all made Earth feel smaller. But past Neptune, the universe pushes back. Even light, the fastest thing we know, begins to feel slow in human terms. It takes hours for signals to cross the outer solar system. A message sent to a far spacecraft does not arrive instantly. A response does not return instantly. Communication begins to feel less like conversation and more like calling across an ocean of time. And still, this is only our own star system. Past Neptune, the solar system begins to prepare us for that truth. It teaches us that most of space is not made of destinations. It teaches us that even within the sun's gravitational territory, the distance between objects can be so large that a traveler feels less like an explorer and more like a moving point in an environment where the distances are the main feature. Some people imagine space as a place of worlds and wonders. That vision is true in many ways, but it can also obscure a quieter truth. Space is mostly empty, and the emptiness is not passive. It is not like a room waiting for furniture. It is a vast distribution of distance. The emptiness between objects defines the scale of the journey much more than the objects themselves. A spacecraft beyond Neptune is not traveling through a series of landscapes. It is crossing an ocean where the islands are rare, tiny, and far apart. That is why the Kuiper Belt can feel so strange. It is not empty in the total sense, but it is so sparse that a traveler might experience it as emptiness for most of the journey. The icy bodies are real. They are numerous by solar system standards, but they are scattered over a volume so vast that the average distance between them is enormous. A spacecraft could pass through the region and not approach any of them closely unless its trajectory was designed for a specific encounter. The belt is full of objects, but the experience of traveling through it might feel like traveling through nothing. This is a different kind of loneliness. It is not the loneliness of being far from other people. It is the loneliness of being in a place where the structure of reality is not scaled to human presence. The objects exist, but they do not fill the space. The space remains the dominant feature. And the space beyond Neptune is not the kind that invites looking. It is the kind that makes looking feel almost useless because the next thing to see may be so far away that the eye cannot find it without instruments. Even the stars are not close. They are distant lights, not destinations. The words used to describe this region, belt, disk, cloud, bubble, boundary, all try to give it shape. They make it possible to talk about. But they also soften the scale. They turn distances into categories. They make the outer solar system sound organized enough to hold in conversation. But if we truly entered it, the categories would fall away. There would be only navigation, time, fuel, power, signals, and the long, dark separation between one object and the next. That separation is why rescue becomes meaningless. In the inner solar system, rescue is already difficult. A mission to Mars cannot be saved casually. A spacecraft at Jupiter or Saturn is not waiting for a quick response. But beyond Neptune, the idea becomes almost symbolic. A machine out there must survive with what it carries. A human crew, if one were ever foolish or brave enough to travel so far, would be removed from every ordinary form of help. Earth could send instructions. It could not send a mechanic. It could not send warmth, spare parts, food, medicine, or comfort quickly enough to match human need. That is why the outer solar system is not only physically remote, but morally quiet. There is no one nearby to intervene. No harbor, no emergency landing site, no planet with air, no station unless humans build one first, no natural shelter. The distance creates a kind of absolute independence, but not the romantic kind. It is independence as exposure. Whatever travels there is alone with its design, its durability, and its luck. The farther outward the journey goes, the more the spacecraft becomes a sealed argument against the universe. This is why leaving the solar system can be misleading in the imagination. It sounds like stepping through a door, but there is no door. The transition is gradual, invisible, and impossible to feel. A spacecraft could cross the heliopause and never notice it visually. It would have to rely on instruments to know that the environment had changed. That lack of visual drama can make the truth harder to feel. But once it is felt, it is deeply unsettling. The universe does not always announce its most important transitions. Sometimes the greatest change is invisible. The deeper you go, the less space looks like the danger it is. That is an eerie thought. On Earth, many dangerous places look dangerous. A storm front looks threatening. A cliff edge looks severe. A wildfire glows. A violent sea moves. In the outer solar system, the danger may look calm. It may look almost peaceful. A black sky, a distant sun, a quiet spacecraft, no visible motion, no immediate threat. Yet the danger is total because the distance has removed almost every path back to safety. Calm can be terrifying when it means nothing is close enough to help. This is why the spaces between objects matter more than the objects themselves. The objects are the chapters we can name. The spaces are what the traveler would live inside. If a spacecraft crosses from Neptune toward the Kuiper Belt, most of its existence is not the encounter with a world. It is the journey between encounters. If it continues beyond Pluto, most of its time is not a flyby or a discovery. It is the long patience of empty travel. For human beings, that is almost the opposite of how travel usually feels. On Earth, the destination dominates the meaning of the journey. The road, flight, or crossing is a temporary passage toward arrival. In deep space, especially beyond Neptune, passage dominates. Arrival becomes rare, short, and precious. A spacecraft may spend years heading toward a single object, gather data for hours or days, and then continue outward into silence again. The universe offers moments. Distance keeps the rest. This gives the outer solar system a strange rhythm. Long emptiness, brief discovery, long waiting, sudden encounter, long darkness, a few images, years of planning, minutes of closest approach. Then the target shrinks behind the spacecraft and the next distance begins. Each success is real, but none of them cancels the vastness. If anything, each success reveals how much remains unvisited. This is why exploration beyond Neptune feels both triumphant and lonely. Every image from out there is a victory over distance. Every image also reminds us how little we have seen. The mind can celebrate the success and still feel the surrounding dark. When New Horizons revealed Pluto, humanity saw an entire world for the first time. Yet the spacecraft did not stop there and become part of a busy frontier. It flew onward toward another target, and then toward longer darkness. The encounter did not make the outer solar system familiar. It opened one window in a wall that stretches beyond sight. That is the emotional pattern of the region. A window opens, the darkness remains. The distances stop making sense because they are not built for minds like ours. They are built by gravity, time, motion, and the slow assembly of a star system. They do not care how long a human life lasts, how fast our machines feel, or how much we want the next object to be nearby. Space is not scaled to human experience. Beyond Neptune, this becomes impossible to ignore. The inner solar system can still fool us a little. The outer solar system cannot. It shows that even our own neighborhood is far beyond us. That phrase, our own neighborhood, becomes strange here. The region beyond Neptune is still part of the solar system, still connected to the sun, still part of the same broad structure as Earth, and yet it is so far away that calling it a neighborhood feels almost dishonest. It is home in the astronomical sense, but not in the emotional sense. Earth belongs to the same system as those distant icy bodies, but the difference between them is so vast that they feel less like neighbors and more like objects tied together by a star that no longer feels close. Home becomes a scale, not a place. The farther outward we go, the more we realize that home has layers. Earth is home to the body. The inner solar system is home to the imagination because it contains familiar planets and sunlight. The outer solar system is home only because gravity and origin say so. It is connected but not comforting. It belongs to the sun but not to human instinct. That layered meaning can be deeply unsettling. It means you can be inside your own solar system and still feel lost. You can still orbit the sun and feel outside the world. You can still receive sunlight and feel abandoned by warmth. Distance, then, is not only a measurement of separation, it changes meaning. A planet far away becomes less of a place and more of a memory. A star behind you becomes less of a sky and more of a direction. A spacecraft in deep space becomes less of a vehicle and more of a message drifting through scale. Beyond Neptune, distance transforms everything it touches. Even time changes. A mission planned by one generation may be completed by another. A signal sent from far away may arrive after people on Earth have slept, worked, aged, and moved on. A spacecraft can continue operating long after its launch has become history. The outer solar system turns exploration into inheritance. The people who dream, build, launch, operate, and interpret may not all be the same people across the journey. Space stretches projects across human lives. That gives the region a quiet sadness. To study it, humans must accept patience beyond ordinary ambition. The objects there have waited for billions of years, and our machines reach them only briefly. We plan for decades to touch a few moments of their existence. We build instruments, calculate trajectories, protect spacecraft from cold and power loss, and then receive faint signals from distances that reduce even triumph to a whisper. The scale makes human achievement beautiful because it is so small. A whisper from beyond Neptune can be one of the greatest things humanity has ever heard. That is the paradox. The distances make us insignificant, and they make our attempts meaningful. If the region were easy to cross, a flyby would not feel sacred. If the next object were nearby, the images would not carry the same weight. The terror of distance is also what gives exploration its dignity. A spacecraft that survives out there becomes a small act of defiance against scale. It cannot conquer the distance. It can only continue through it, sending back proof that human curiosity has reached farther than human bodies ever have. But curiosity does not erase terror. It simply travels with it. Beyond Neptune, the journey becomes a slow lesson in humility. The solar system is larger than the planets. The sun is less emotionally present than we thought. Pluto is not the edge. The Kuiper Belt is vast and sparse. The distances between objects are so great that travel itself becomes the dominant experience. Every familiar idea of progress weakens. Farther does not mean closer to a new adventure. It often means deeper into waiting. Waiting under a small sun. Waiting between faint bodies. Waiting while Earth becomes a story told by instruments. That is the calm horror of the outer solar system. It is not rushing toward you. It is not loud. It is not theatrical. It is a silence measured in astronomical units. A darkness crossed by machines that take years to find the next object. A region where even success feels lonely because the next distance immediately begins. The more we understand it, the more Neptune seems less like the last planet and more like the final familiar sign before scale becomes the main character. And once scale becomes the main character, the journey eventually reaches the place where the sun's own bubble begins to fade. That bubble is not visible in the way a planet is visible. It has no glowing wall, no shell of glass, no surface that a spacecraft can photograph like the rings of Saturn or the clouds of Neptune. From far away, the solar system looks like a family of worlds moving around a star. But the sun creates more than light and gravity. It also sends out a continuous flow of charged particles, a solar wind streaming away from it in every direction. That flow carries the sun's magnetic influence outward, forming a vast region around the star that is shaped by the sun itself. This region is called the heliosphere. The heliopause is where that transition becomes real. Crossing it does not mean leaving the sun's gravity completely. It does not mean a spacecraft has reached another star. It does not mean the solar system is suddenly behind it in every possible sense. The outer structure of the sun's family may extend much farther in other ways, but the heliopause is still one of the most profound boundaries humanity has ever reached, because it marks a change from the space shaped primarily by our star's wind to the medium that exists between stars. It is the place where the sun's breath weakens. That phrase is not scientific, but it carries the feeling. The sun has been breathing outward for billions of years, filling its surroundings with a flow of charged particles. Near Earth, we experience the sun through light, heat, storms, auroras, and space weather. Far beyond Neptune, the solar wind is no longer the warm or bright part of the sun, but it is still a sign of the star's presence. It is the sun reaching into space in a way that instruments can feel. The heliopause is where that reach meets resistance. The interstellar medium, the material between the stars, presses against the solar wind. It slows it, shapes it, and eventually stops it from expanding further. The boundary between the two is not a clean line. It is complex, shifting, and affected by the motion of the sun through the galaxy. But it is real. It is a place where the sun's environment gives way to the galaxy's environment. It is a transition from one kind of space to another. Only two human-made objects have crossed this boundary so far: Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. They were launched in the 1970s, designed for a grand tour of the outer planets, and they continued outward after their primary missions ended. They kept sending data as they traveled farther than any other spacecraft. They measured changes in the solar wind, in cosmic rays, in the magnetic field. Eventually, they registered the signature of a crossing. The sun's influence no longer dominated the environment around them. They had entered interstellar space. That moment was not marked by any visible event. No gate opened, no light changed, no voice announced the transition. The spacecraft simply reported what their instruments detected, and scientists on Earth interpreted the signals. A boundary was crossed, but it could only be known through data. That makes the heliopause feel even more abstract. It is not a place you can point to in a photograph. It is a place you can infer from measurements. It is a threshold that feels more like a mathematical conclusion than a landscape, but perhaps that makes it more haunting. The most profound threshold humanity has crossed beyond the planets did not look like a threshold. It had to be recognized through patience, measurement, and interpretation. A spacecraft became our sense organ in a place our bodies could never survive. It felt the boundary for us, not with skin or eyes, but with instruments designed before many of the people reading the data had even begun their careers. The heliopause turns exploration into trust in machines. It is a transition into a larger loneliness. That is why the phrase interstellar space can be misleading. It sounds like arrival, as if crossing the heliopause means entering the realm of stars in a way that brings new places closer. But interstellar space is not a destination in the human sense. It is the ocean between destinations. Crossing into it does not mean another star is nearby. It means the protective, familiar influence of our own star has weakened enough that the environment is now shaped more by the galaxy around it. A spacecraft beyond the heliopause is still within the sun's gravitational reach. It is still, in a broad sense, in the solar system. It has not left the sun behind completely, but the nature of its surroundings has changed. The solar wind is no longer the dominant flow. The interstellar medium provides the context. The journey begins to feel less like moving through the solar system and more like watching the solar system dissolve into its environment. That is a frightening idea because it removes another layer of boundary. Neptune was not the edge. Pluto was not the edge. The Kuiper Belt was not the edge. Even the heliopause, one of the most meaningful boundaries we can identify, is not a wall. It is another transition, a boundary that is real and yet almost impossible to feel. It is a negotiation. The heliopause is where the balance forms. There is something almost humbling about that. The sun, which feels supreme from Earth, is only one participant in a larger environment. Its wind does not expand forever without resistance. Its magnetic influence does not command the galaxy. It makes a space around itself, and that space has limits. The Milky Way is not empty background behind the solar system. It is an environment that surrounds and shapes the outer boundary of our star's domain. It contains particles from ancient stars, magnetic fields stretching across space, cosmic rays, interstellar dust, and traces of processes far older and larger than the solar system itself. The medium between stars is sparse, but it is part of the galaxy's body. When a spacecraft crosses the heliopause, it begins to sample that body more directly. It enters a region where our star is no longer the main local voice. The galaxy becomes louder in influence, not in sound. That is one of the reasons the heliopause feels so quietly terrifying. It is the point where the solar system stops feeling self-contained. The planets, the Kuiper Belt, the Sun, and Earth are all part of a moving system embedded in something larger. Beyond the bubble, the galaxy is no longer an idea seen as a band of light from Earth's night sky. It becomes the surrounding medium, the environment into which our star is moving. The Milky Way is no longer only above us, it is around us. The heliopause makes that almost physical. It says that the galaxy touches the sun's bubble. It says that the space between stars begins not as a distant fantasy, but as a real environment pressing against the outer reach of our star. It says that the boundary between home and the galaxy is not somewhere out there in thought. It is reachable by machines, measurable by instruments, and crossed by objects built on Earth. That should be inspiring. It is also unnerving because if a spacecraft can cross that boundary, then the boundary was never as impossible as it felt. The solar system is not a closed world, it is open to the galaxy. It exchanges particles, radiation, dust, and influence with the space around it. Earth exists inside a bubble, but not inside a fortress. The universe beyond the sun is not separate from us. It is already interacting with the outer edge of our system. Home has an edge, but the edge is porous. That is a very different image from the simple one. A child's solar system diagram often ends with the last planet, or perhaps Pluto. A more detailed diagram adds the Kuiper Belt. But the heliopause teaches something deeper. The solar system is an interaction between a star and its surroundings. It is not just objects orbiting a center. It is a moving environment with a boundary shaped by pressure, motion, and the galaxy itself. This makes the phrase beyond Neptune more powerful. Because beyond Neptune, we do not simply find more objects. We begin to find the machinery of the sun's relationship with interstellar space. The outer solar system is not only a place of remnants. It is a place where the sun's presence is tested against the wider galaxy. That is why it can feel so terrifying. We are watching our star become local. Local means limited. Limited means small compared with what surrounds it. And if the sun is local, then Earth is even more fragile than it feels. Earth is not at the center of the universe. It is not even near the edge of the solar system's influence. It is a warm world deep inside one star's bubble, protected by layers it rarely notices. Its atmosphere, magnetic field, distance from the sun, and position inside the heliosphere all form part of the hidden conditions that make life possible. Beyond Neptune, and especially near the heliopause, those hidden conditions become visible by contrast. We understand shelter when we see its edge. The heliopause is one edge of that shelter. Not the only edge, not the final edge, but one of the most important. It tells us that Earth's environment is nested inside larger environments. A room inside a house inside weather, weather inside atmosphere, atmosphere inside the sun's influence, the sun's influence inside the galaxy. The farther outward we travel, the more layers we pass through, and the less any one layer feels absolute. What felt like the whole world becomes a pocket inside a larger pocket than another. That nesting can make the universe feel bottomless. There is always a larger environment, always a wider context, always another scale in which the previous one becomes small. At the heliopause, the solar system becomes one of those smaller contexts, still enormous by human standards, still beloved, still the place that contains Earth and all known life, but no longer the largest relevant environment. The interstellar medium surrounds it, the galaxy contains it. The cosmic scale continues outward. This is where the calm terror of space becomes philosophical. The edge of the sun's bubble is not only a scientific boundary, it is a reminder that every home exists within something larger, and the larger thing is not built for us. That is what makes crossing the heliopause feel so different from reaching another planet. A planet is a place, a boundary is a relationship. The heliopause is the relationship between our star and the galaxy. It is not about scenery, it is about belonging. Inside it, the spacecraft is within the sun's particle environment. Outside it, the spacecraft is more directly in interstellar space. The difference is subtle, invisible, and enormous. The same darkness, a different universe around you. That line may sound dramatic, but emotionally it is true. A spacecraft just beyond the heliopause still sees the sun. It still receives signals from Earth. It still carries human design. But the environment it moves through is no longer dominated by the sun in the same way. It has entered a space that belongs more to the galaxy than to the star that launched it outward. It is still near the sun by galactic standards, but psychologically it has crossed into a deeper category of alone. That aloneness is not empty. It is filled with context. The heliopause teaches that even loneliness has structure. The spacecraft is alone, but not in nothing. It is moving through interstellar plasma, magnetic fields, cosmic rays, and dust. It is beyond the planets, beyond Neptune, beyond Pluto's old emotional edge, beyond the main region of the sun's wind. It is surrounded by the faint material between stars. Nothing there resembles a home. Yet everything there belongs to the greater environment that stars move through. This is why interstellar space begins with unease rather than adventure. The first step beyond the sun's bubble does not bring us closer to another world in any meaningful human way. It brings us into the vast between. It gives us contact with the galaxy, but not comfort. It proves that human machines can leave one layer of solar influence. But it also proves how little awaits immediately after that boundary. There is no nearby harbor, no second sun waiting to warm the craft, no planet waiting just outside the bubble. Only the next scale, and scale has already become the main character. The heliopause deepens it. It takes the distances beyond Neptune and adds a new realization. Those distances are not merely between objects, but between environments. A traveler is not just moving from planet to dwarf planet to boundary. They are moving from one way of being in space to another, from the planetary system to the outer remnants, from the sun's strong presence to its weakened light, from the solar wind to the interstellar medium, from home's outer grounds to the galaxy's open sea. And the sea is vast beyond any human journey. That is why the heliopause does not end the terror of the space beyond Neptune. It sharpens it. It shows that after all the distance already crossed, the spacecraft has only just begun to enter the space between stars. Neptune is far, Pluto is farther. The Kuiper Belt is vast. The heliopause is astonishingly distant, and yet after reaching it, the nearest stars remain so far away that the crossing feels less like arrival and more like confirmation of how large the emptiness truly is. The sun's bubble fades, the stars do not come closer. That is the haunting truth. Crossing a boundary can feel like progress, but in space, progress often reveals more distance. The heliopause is a milestone, not a destination. It tells us where the sun's environment changes, but it does not give the traveler a new world. It is a line of meaning drawn across an ocean so large that the next shore remains beyond imagination. This is why the place where the sun's bubble fades may be one of the most terrifying regions in the journey. Not because something waits there, because almost nothing waits there. Because the sun has weakened and the stars are still unreachable. Because the solar system has become a bubble behind you, and the galaxy ahead is not a place but a vast medium of distance. The heliopause is the edge of one kind of belonging, and beyond it, interstellar space is not a destination but the beginning of the between. The phrase sounds almost triumphant. Interstellar space. It feels like a doorway has been crossed, as if the spacecraft has escaped the solar system and entered the realm of the stars. The words carry adventure, motion, discovery, and a sense that the next great place must be waiting somewhere ahead. After the planets, after Neptune, after Pluto, after the Kuiper Belt, after the fading of the sun's bubble, the mind wants interstellar space to feel like arrival. It wants a new chapter with new scenery, new landmarks, and perhaps the first real step toward another star. But that is not what interstellar space gives. It gives distance. It gives the long, cold interval between stars. It gives a darkness where the sun is no longer the dominant presence, where the next star is unimaginably far, and where the word between becomes the most honest description of the environment. Interstellar space is not a place of bright new worlds. It is the space where bright new worlds are separated from each other. It is the medium through which light travels for years before reaching another sun. It is the silence between voices in a galaxy that can be both crowded and empty. This is a difficult idea to hold. A galaxy can contain hundreds of billions of stars and still be mostly empty from the perspective of travel. That contradiction is the heart of interstellar space. The Milky Way can glow across Earth's night sky as a river of light, dense and ancient and crowded with suns. But from within it, the stars are separated by distances so large that a spacecraft leaving one system enters an abyss of time before the next system becomes reachable. The galaxy is crowded only when seen from far away. Up close, it is a desert of distances, with stars scattered like campfires too far apart to warm one another. The journey becomes less like travel and more like waiting with direction. That is a strange and unsettling form of existence. A spacecraft in interstellar space does not stop, but it also does not arrive. It continues through a medium that may contain sparse particles, magnetic fields, dust, cosmic rays, and the faint influence of the galaxy, but not the kind of scenery that human beings associate with movement. There may be no nearby world to photograph, no giant planet to approach, no ring system to cross, no moon to reveal hidden terrain. The spacecraft simply continues. That continuation is heroic from Earth. It is lonely from space. That is the beginning of the between. The between is not nothing. It is the tissue of the galaxy. It contains the traces of stars that lived and died before the sun formed. It carries atoms that may one day become part of new stars, new planets, and perhaps new forms of life. It is crossed by cosmic rays and shaped by magnetic fields. It contains dust grains, gas, and faint structures so thin that a human body would experience them as vacuum, yet rich enough for astronomy to study as part of the galaxy's living cycle. That may be the hardest shift. In the inner solar system, space feels like the distance between worlds that matter. Between Earth and Mars, between Jupiter and Saturn, between Neptune and Pluto. But in interstellar space, the distance is so overwhelming that the gap becomes the main reality. The stars are not the whole story. The space between them is. Any spacecraft that enters it becomes a tiny moving point inside the dominant structure of the galaxy. Separation. A human mind is not like separation without scale. This makes the word escape feel different. To leave the solar system is to enter an environment where the local anchors are gone. The planets are behind you. The sun is no longer the center of your environment. The next star is not a destination within reach. You have left home, but you have not arrived anywhere. You are in the between, and the between is vast. That is not a triumphant image, it is a humbling one. The Voyager spacecraft, for example, are often described as having left the solar system. That phrase is exciting. It suggests a boundary has been crossed, a new phase of the mission has begun. But the spacecraft are still within the sun's gravitational influence. They will continue to orbit the galactic center alongside the sun for billions of years. They have not reached another star. They have not encountered another world. They are still in the sun's extended neighborhood in a loose gravitational sense. But the environment around them is no longer the sun's bubble. They are in interstellar space, which means they are in the between. That is why interstellar space is not comforting even when nothing dangerous appears. No hostile planet is waiting. No storm rises. No alien machine blocks the path. The danger is quieter than that. It is the realization that the universe does not arrange itself around travel. The stars are not placed at human intervals. The galaxy is not scaled like a map in a story. The fact that a machine can leave the sun's bubble does not mean the galaxy becomes reachable in any human sense. The first step into interstellar space is not the beginning of easy star travel. It is the beginning of a much longer kind of isolation. A spacecraft in interstellar space carries with it the last echoes of its origin. The signals it sends become weaker. The sun behind it becomes one star among many. The planets are no longer nearby in any meaningful sense. Earth is not visible to the naked eye from that distance. The spacecraft is surrounded by a darkness that contains no landmarks that the human mind can easily recognize. It is moving through the galaxy, but the galaxy is so large that the motion feels almost pointless unless measured over geological time. This is where the silence of interstellar space becomes almost oppressive. The spacecraft can still transmit, it can still receive commands, it can still report on the environment. But the environment itself is not communicating in any way that feels like a response. It is not sending messages back. It is not acknowledging the spacecraft's presence. It is simply there, vast, sparse, cold, and indifferent. The spacecraft is a tiny voice in a volume that contains almost nothing to listen. That may be the most unsettling thing about the between. It is not that something is there. It is that almost nothing is there, and the almost nothing is all there is. The spacecraft become messages to time, not only to possible others. That is part of their beauty, but it is also part of their sadness. A message sent into interstellar space may never be found. A record may drift for longer than the civilization that made it. A machine may become silent long before it reaches anything new. Its path may continue without power, without communication, without purpose in the active sense, carrying evidence that humans once looked outward and tried to place something of themselves beyond the sun. Interstellar space accepts the message. It does not promise an answer. That silence is central. On Earth, a message usually implies communication. Someone may read it, hear it, receive it, answer it, misunderstand it, ignore it. In interstellar space, a message may simply continue. It may pass through darkness for millions of years without meeting a mind. The galaxy may be full of stars and still provide no listener. The between is so large that even a deliberate artifact can become effectively invisible. Not loneliness as emotion inside one person, but loneliness as a property of scale. A spacecraft can exist in a galaxy full of matter and still be unlikely to encounter anything. A star can shine for billions of years with other stars all around it and still be separated by light years. A civilization can send a signal and never know whether it crossed a living world or only empty space. The universe can contain countless possibilities and still feel silent from any one location. Interstellar space makes that silence real. It is the silence between stars. It is not silence because there is no activity anywhere. Stars are forming, exploding, orbiting, burning, dying. Gas clouds drift, magnetic fields twist. Cosmic rays move, black holes feed, planets circle distant suns. The galaxy is alive with processes. But the spaces between those processes are so immense that any traveler can feel surrounded by stillness. The activity is elsewhere. The traveler is in the between. The universe may be active, but not here, not close, not in time to matter. A human crew in interstellar space, if such a thing could ever happen, would face a psychological environment more extreme than any journey inside the solar system. Even Mars would be near by comparison. Even Neptune would be home territory. Beyond the heliopause, the crew would not only be far from Earth, but outside the stronger local environment of the Sun. They would know that the nearest destination is not a planet in the next orbit, but another star across distances that make rescue meaningless and return almost mythic. A ship there would have to become its own world. Not a base, not a station, not a temporary mission craft, but a complete moving environment built to endure time, isolation, failure, and human psychology on a scale we have never tested. It would need power that lasts, shielding that protects, closed systems that recycle, social structures that remain stable, and a reason to continue when the outside view changes almost not at all. The darkness between stars would not challenge only engines, it would challenge meaning. Why continue when arrival belongs to another generation? Why preserve a mission when the destination is beyond memory? Why leave a star if the next star cannot be reached in a human lifetime? These questions belong to interstellar space because it stretches ambition beyond personal experience. Exploration inside the solar system can still be tied to a crew, a mission, a return, a set of images, a landing, an orbit, a discovery. Interstellar travel forces a different scale of purpose. It asks whether humans can care about journeys they will not finish, worlds they will not see, and messages they may never know were received. That is not only scientific, it is almost spiritual. Not religious necessarily, but spiritual in the sense that it asks what kind of species we are. When the universe refuses to fit inside our lifespan, the space beyond Neptune eventually leads to that question. It begins with cold objects and weak sunlight. Then it grows into distances that break the idea of ordinary travel. Then it opens into interstellar space, where the next meaningful shore may be beyond the reach of any single human life. This is why the between can feel more terrifying than the edge. An edge suggests transition. A between suggests duration. The heliopause can be crossed. The interstellar medium can be entered, but the between cannot simply be passed through quickly. It must be endured if one travels at all. And endurance is very different from arrival. Endurance means systems remaining alive through time. It means boredom, silence, maintenance, repetition, and uncertainty. It means the journey itself becomes the world. For a spacecraft without people, that endurance is mechanical. For humans, it would be existential. That is why interstellar space is not just a location in astronomy. It is a test of imagination. It forces us to admit that reaching the space between stars is not the same as reaching the stars. It reveals the gap between our language and reality. We say interstellar as if stars are now the subject. But the first thing interstellar space shows us is not another star. It shows us the distance that keeps stars apart. The word points to stars. The experience points to emptiness. This is where the calm horror becomes strongest. Beyond Neptune, the solar system has already become strange. The Kuiper Belt has shown ancient frozen remnants. Pluto has shown that the edge is an illusion. The sun has become a distant star. The heliopause has shown that even the sun's bubble fades. But interstellar space removes the final expectation that crossing the boundary means arriving somewhere meaningful. It is the universe saying, there is more, but not nearby. That sentence may be the essence of deep space. There is more, always more, but not in the way human longing wants it. The more is separated by scale. The more is scattered across time. The more may be unreachable, silent, hidden, or so distant that discovering it becomes the work of generations. Interstellar space is the physical form of that truth. It is possibilities stretched across emptiness. It is the corridor between stars with no walls, no floor, no air, and no guarantee that anything waits close enough to matter. The corridor has no end you can see, only direction. A spacecraft there becomes a strange kind of prayer made of metal. It moves because humans once believed movement mattered. It carries instruments because humans once believed knowing mattered. It sends signals because humans once believed connection mattered. But the environment around it offers no emotional response. The darkness does not become warmer because the mission is meaningful. The distances do not shorten because the spacecraft is brave. That indifference is not cruelty, it is scale. And scale is often enough. Interstellar space is terrifying because it shows the universe without the comfort of local structure. The planets are gone, the sun is weakened, the boundaries have blurred, the next star is not close, the spacecraft is between. There may be particles around it, fields around it, dust around it, the galaxy around it, but not a place where human life can rest. It is surrounded by the material of the cosmos and still utterly without shelter. That is the difference between presence and refuge. The galaxy is present. Refuge is not. So when a machine enters interstellar space, it enters something real but not welcoming. It has not left everything behind completely because the sun still shines and Earth can still listen for a while. It has not reached the next star because the next star remains unimaginably distant. It occupies the most unsettling state of all, no longer fully inside the familiar bubble, not yet anywhere new. A traveler between meanings, a messenger between homes, a fragment of Earth moving through the space between stars. This may be the most honest image of interstellar space. Not a gateway to immediate wonders, not a cosmic highway, not a dramatic border filled with light, but a long, dark interval. It is where the ambition of leaving the solar system meets the reality of the galaxy. It is where the words between stars become less poetic and more severe. The stars are real, but the between is larger than the mind wants to admit. And this is why the space beyond Neptune grows more terrifying the farther the journey continues. Each layer removes another comfort. Neptune removes the last major planet. Pluto removes the old edge. The Kuiper Belt removes the idea of emptiness. The faint sun removes the warmth of home. The heliopause removes the stronger shelter of the star's bubble. Interstellar space removes the illusion of arrival. After that, there is only the between, a vast, thin, ancient darkness filled with almost nothing close, almost nothing useful, and almost nothing that can answer. And once the between is understood, the next distant structure becomes even more ghostly. The imagined outer shell of the solar system, where comets may sleep in the dark for millions of years. The Oort cloud is frightening partly because it is not something we have seen directly. It does not appear in the sky as a glowing ring. It does not form a visible wall around the sun. It is not a planet, not a belt we can photograph clearly, and not a destination any spacecraft has entered. It is an idea built from evidence, from the behavior of long-period comets, from gravity, from models of how the solar system formed and scattered icy bodies into distant orbits. It is one of the most enormous structures connected to our sun, and yet it remains almost entirely hidden, vast enough to surround the solar system, not a dark belt of frozen worlds beyond Neptune, but a far, thin, spherical reservoir of icy bodies loosely bound to the sun, scattered so widely that the word cloud may be the only word that can hold the idea. Even though it is not a cloud like anything near Earth, it would not look misty, it would not glow, it would not feel full. If a traveler could move through it, they might see almost nothing at all. A cloud made of absence. The comet we see from Earth as a glowing visitor may have spent the overwhelming majority of its life in a darkness so remote that the planets were only distant consequences of the sun's gravity. It may have drifted for millions or billions of years in the outer reservoir, almost unchanged until something disturbed its orbit and sent it inward. By the time humans notice it, the journey has already been ancient beyond memory. This makes comets feel different. They are not only bright objects in the sky, they are messages from the farthest cold. When a long-period comet enters the inner solar system, it carries material from regions we cannot easily reach. It may preserve ices and dust from the early history of the solar system. It may have been stored far from the sun, away from the stronger heat and activity that altered inner worlds. It arrives as a fragile record, briefly awakened by sunlight before it continues on a long path, perhaps never to return within any human timescale. The Oort cloud is terrifying because it turns the solar system into something almost alive with sleeping memories. The Oort cloud is a reservoir, a hidden supply of comets, barely warmed, barely visible, barely part of home. Earth is home in the biological sense. The inner solar system is home in the familiar sense. The Oort cloud is the echo of the solar system, a faint outer memory of its formation. The objects there are older than Earth in some cases, older than the dinosaurs, older than the continents, older than the atmosphere as we know it. They are old beyond human culture, old beyond language, old beyond memory, and yet some may still return, then vanish again. This makes the sky itself feel connected to the farthest regions. The Oort cloud may be unseen, but its messengers sometimes come inward. They remind us that the outer darkness is not completely separate from the inner worlds. It can send visitors. It can place ancient ice into the sky above Earth. It can briefly cross the warm region where planets, life, and human attention exist, then return to long darkness. It is also unsettling because it means the solar system's farthest regions are not purely remote. They are connected to us through rare, ancient paths. A comet from the outer reservoir may pass through the inner solar system after a journey shaped by forces far beyond Neptune. It may become a spectacle, a scientific opportunity, or in some cases, a reminder that small bodies from the depths can cross planetary paths. Most are not threats, but the idea itself is powerful. The far dark is not sealed away. That thought changes the mood of the Oort cloud. It is not merely a distant shell where objects sleep forever. It is a source of motion toward the inner system. It is a waiting population that may occasionally become active. It is a reservoir not only of objects but of possible arrivals. Each comet that comes inward is a temporary bridge between the warm inner worlds and the cold outer shell. A bridge made of ice and gravity. No human bridge could be longer. The Oort cloud is also terrifying because it may be larger than the planetary solar system by a scale that feels almost absurd. The planets occupy the famous central region. Neptune is already remote. Pluto and the Kuiper Belt stretch the story outward. But the Oort cloud may extend so far that the planets become only the bright central seed of a much larger gravitational structure. If the inner solar system is a lamp, the Oort cloud is the faint outer reach of the light's influence, where almost nothing is illuminated, and yet the lamp still defines the orbit. This makes the planets feel less like the solar system and more like its core. The solar system most people know is the center, not the whole. That realization may be one of the strongest emotional turns in a journey like this. When we say solar system, most people picture planets, maybe moons, asteroids, comets, Pluto. But if the Oort cloud exists as expected, then the Sun's family reaches far beyond the familiar architecture. The known planets are the dense inner story. Beyond them are belts, scattered objects, boundaries, and a distant shell so large that our ordinary map feels like a simplification, almost too small to be honest. This does not make the old map wrong. It makes it incomplete, and incompleteness is often where cosmic fear begins. The Oort cloud forces us to accept that the solar system has parts we have not directly seen, parts inferred from visitors, orbits, and models. It reminds us that even our own star system remains partly theoretical at the edges. We can send spacecraft across the heliopause. We can photograph Pluto. We can map planets. We can measure light from galaxies billions of years away. And still, we cannot directly image the full outer shell of icy bodies that may surround our sun. The nearest cosmic home still contains invisible architecture. It means familiarity is layered over ignorance. We know the sun, we know Earth, we have visited the moon, we have sent machines to every major planet, we have photographed distant worlds and measured the edge of the solar wind, yet the farthest structure of our own solar system remains ghost-like. We infer it, we name it, we model it, but it stays mostly hidden, too distant and too faint to become ordinary. That hiddenness is not a failure, it is a reminder of scale. Some things are not hidden because they are mystical. They are hidden because they are far, dim, sparse, and slow. The Oort cloud is difficult not because it is supernatural, but because the universe is large enough to make even the sun's own outer family almost invisible. That is more frightening than mystery alone. It means the barrier is not only knowledge, but distance itself. Distance becomes darkness again. Not because light is absent, but because understanding thins out with space. The farther out we imagine the Oort cloud, the more the sun becomes a gravitational idea rather than a visible comfort. A body there may receive sunlight so weak that the star which created Earth's daylight becomes just a distant point. The sun's gravity still reaches, but its warmth does not matter. This separation between gravity and comfort is one of the deepest themes of the outer solar system. Something can belong to the sun and still be unimaginably cold. Belonging is not safety. Orbit is not home. That may be the Oort cloud's central lesson. It belongs to the solar system, but it does not feel like the solar system. Its objects may be bound to the sun, but the connection is fragile, vast, and slow. Passing stars or galactic tides may disturb them. Some may be sent inward, some may be lost. Some may remain in distant sleep for timescales that make human history seem like a brief flicker. The Oort cloud is not lonely. It is indifferent. Its bodies do not wait in the way humans wait. They do not feel time. They do not long for the sun. They do not know they are ancient. They simply move according to gravity, preserved by cold and distance. The sadness belongs to us because we understand what it would mean for a conscious being to be there. The Oort cloud is one of the places where that feeling becomes strongest. It suggests a solar system so vast that even its outskirts are almost empty of human meaning. It shows that the sun's family has regions where no sunlight can comfort, no planet can anchor the eye, and no map can fully satisfy. It turns the familiar word system into something almost oceanic, a structure of inner warmth, outer remnants, invisible boundaries, interstellar contact, and a final ghost shell of comets. The ghost shell is not the end of the universe. It is not even the beginning of another star. It is only the farthest whisper of our own. That is what makes it so terrifying. If the outermost reaches of our own solar system already feel this distant, this cold, and this uncertain, then what does the space between stars truly mean? If home itself has a ghostly edge, what does it mean to leave home completely? The Oort cloud stretches the idea of belonging until it almost breaks. A comet there may still be ours, but only barely. A spacecraft traveling outward would not reach the Oort cloud in any easy human time frame. Even the fastest machines we have sent would need immense spans of time to enter those far regions in a meaningful way. This means the Oort cloud is not only distant, it is almost inaccessible to direct exploration by ordinary mission planning. It is part of the solar system that we know mostly through the objects it sends inward, like hearing about a distant country only from travelers who appear at rare intervals. The messengers come to us. We do not go to the source. That reversal makes the region feel even more ghostly. We study its possible residents when they become comets. We reconstruct its shape through their orbits. We build models of a structure too large and faint to see whole. The Oort cloud is known by echoes, not by direct landscape. It is a place inferred from motion, a hidden population suggested by visitors from the dark. That is why it belongs in the deepest part of this journey. Beyond Neptune, the terror grows in layers. First, the last planet is left behind. Then, the Kuiper Belt reveals a frozen frontier. Pluto breaks the illusion of an edge. The sun becomes a distant star. Scale becomes the main reality. The heliopause shows that the sun's bubble fades. Interstellar space becomes the between. And then the Oort cloud suggests that even after all of that, the sun may still hold a vast, ghostly outer shell of bodies almost beyond reach. The map expands one more time, and with it, the darkness expands too. That expansion changes the way we look back inward. Earth becomes almost impossibly small, not only compared with the universe, but compared with the full reach of its own solar system. The planets become the bright central neighborhood. Neptune becomes less like an edge and more like the last major lamp before the long dark begins. Pluto becomes a signpost. The Kuiper Belt becomes a frozen field. The heliopause becomes a boundary of influence. Interstellar space becomes the between. The Oort cloud becomes the far outer memory, a memory made of sleeping comets, a memory too distant to see, a memory that may occasionally wake and fall sunward. That final image is what makes the Oort cloud so powerful. It is not a place of dramatic violence in the imagination, though comets can become dramatic when they enter the inner solar system. It is not a place of bright discovery because we have not seen it directly. It is not a place where human life could ever feel safe. It is a vast, almost invisible reservoir at the edge of the sun's reach, where the solar system becomes so faint that it nearly blends with the galaxy around it. The Oort cloud is terrifying because it makes home feel endless and empty at the same time. Endless because the sun's family stretches so far beyond the planets. Empty because almost all of that stretch contains nothing a human body can use. And after imagining that ghost shell of sleeping comets, the next question becomes what it would feel like for a human being to travel through such a region, with no nearby world, no real rescue, and no place that could ever feel safe. The answer begins with a simple truth. Beyond Neptune, safety becomes almost entirely artificial. On Earth, safety is built into the world before we add anything to it. The ground holds us, the air surrounds us, gravity keeps us close. The atmosphere softens sunlight, burns many small objects before they reach the surface, and gives every breath a kind of invisible support. Even in dangerous places on Earth, there is still a planet beneath the danger. A desert is hostile, but it has air. An ocean is deadly without preparation, but it is still part of a living world. A mountain can kill, but it belongs to an environment the human body can partly understand. Beyond Neptune, there is no such background support. There is only the vehicle. There is no nearby planet to make the mind feel anchored. That is why the terror is not only the distance outside the spacecraft, it is the fragility inside it. Every system becomes a quiet promise against death. Most of the time, a well-designed system may work so smoothly that the crew stops noticing it. The air feels normal, the lights glow, the temperature stays stable, the water comes from storage or recycling, the walls feel solid, the hum of equipment becomes background noise. But underneath that normality is the knowledge that normality is being manufactured. Home becomes an ongoing mechanical act. It is not a place. It is a process. A glance outside would show exactly what the crew already knows. There is nothing nearby that belongs to them. No open world, no breathable sky, no horizon with familiar scale, no weather, no green, no ocean, no place to fall safely. The ship is the only human environment in a region that does not notice human presence. Outside, the universe is not hostile in the way an enemy is hostile. It is worse in a quieter way. It is indifferent. Indifference can be more frightening than danger. Danger at least feels focused. Indifference does not care. It does not try to harm you. It simply does not notice you. That is the deeper horror of the outer solar system. It is not an enemy. It is a place where human presence is irrelevant. The cold would kill you, but not because it hates you. The vacuum would kill you, but not because it targets you. The distance would isolate you, but not because it wants you to suffer. It would simply happen because the universe does not require your survival. That is why a human journey beyond Neptune would require not only engineering, but psychological preparation. The crew would have to live with the knowledge that their environment is manufactured. Every day they would have to trust the systems that keep them alive. Every day they would have to accept that a single failure could be catastrophic. Every day they would have to remain calm despite the impossibility of rescue. Every day they would have to find meaning in a place that offers none. Can people remain psychologically whole when the world outside their walls is almost entirely unusable? Can they keep trusting a machine as their only environment? Can they preserve relationships under pressure when no one can leave? Can they accept that every argument, every mistake, every grief, every private fear happens inside the same sealed system that must keep everyone alive? These are not abstract questions, they are the real questions of long-duration spaceflight. And beyond Neptune, they would become the central questions of existence. The mission would change them. It changes memory, identity, relationships, and the way time feels. A crew leaving Earth might begin with excitement and purpose. Years later, the same mission could feel like the only world they have. Birthdays, losses, changes on Earth. Political events, family lives, entire cultural moments would continue far behind them. The people on board would age inside the mission. The ship would become not just transportation, but biography. Every corridor, every work area, every sound, every routine would become part of the way their lives are measured. The danger would not always be fear. It might be monotony. The same walls, the same systems, the same small group of people, the same artificial air, the same scheduled maintenance, the same reports, the same exercise equipment, the same hidden worry that any serious failure could become irreversible. In movies, deep space is often filled with dramatic events. In reality, one of its harshest psychological pressures may be sameness. A person could look at the stars and know they are surrounded by unimaginable space, then turn away and face the same few meters of habitat. Infinite outside, limited inside. No safe way to join the outside. No real way to expand the inside. A mission could carry virtual reality, entertainment, gardens, social spaces, exercise, private rooms, artificial cycles of light and darkness. And still, the basic truth would remain. The entire human world is a sealed pocket moving through a region where a human body cannot live for even moments unprotected. This is where scale becomes intimate, not because the person can feel the whole universe, but because the person can feel the thinness of protection. A small sound becomes meaningful when silence surrounds the mission. In the far outer regions, the crew would become aware of small things in a way people on Earth rarely are. The sound of fans, the taste of recycled water, the brightness of artificial light, the feel of the same fabric, the smell of machinery and human habitation, the schedule of maintenance, the careful storage of every tool, the discipline of not wasting anything, the routine of checking systems that must keep working because there is no local environment to replace them. A generation ship beyond Neptune, or beyond the sun's bubble, would not be exploring space in the romantic sense. It would be attempting to turn confinement into civilization. It means safety is not only survival. A person can survive and still feel unsafe. A habitat can maintain pressure and still feel fragile. A mission can be successful and still feel psychologically heavy. The outer solar system would test not only whether humans can build reliable machines, but whether humans can feel at home inside reliability alone. Can comfort be engineered? Can belonging be built from recycled air, artificial light, and shared purpose? Can a sealed machine become a true place? Inside a fragile human world, outside the ancient cold, that contrast would define everything. It would make every act of life feel both brave and temporary. Eating a meal, sleeping, repairing a pump, watching a recording from Earth, tending a plant, speaking quietly with another person. These ordinary things would become extraordinary because of where they happen. They would happen inside a bubble of life, moving through a region that has no use for life. There is dignity in that. There is also fear. That is the central human terror of the outer solar system. Not monsters, not sudden cosmic violence, but the realization that everything human has to be carried. Air has to be carried. Water has to be carried. Warmth has to be carried. Culture has to be carried. Hope has to be carried. And the farther outward the journey goes, the heavier that carrying becomes. Because Earth is not only a place behind the spacecraft, it is the origin of every system that makes the spacecraft meaningful. Every screw, every wire, every line of code, every human body, every story, every language, every dream of exploration began on a warm planet deep inside the sun's brighter region. Beyond Neptune, that origin recedes until it becomes almost symbolic. The ship is not just traveling away from Earth, it is stretching Earth's influence into a place where Earth has no natural reach. The human presence becomes an extension of home into the unhome. That may be the most honest way to describe it. Unhome, not enemy territory, not evil darkness. Simply a place where the conditions of home do not exist unless we build them. The space beyond Neptune is unhome because it does not contain the things human beings quietly rely on. Breathable air, open ground, weather, nearby help, sensory variety, natural cycles, living ecosystems, and the emotional confidence that the world around us is larger than our machines. In the far outer solar system, the world around us would be larger than our machines, but not in a comforting way. It would be larger as absence. That absence presses into the mind. It makes safety feel conditional. It makes technology feel sacred and terrifying at the same time. The crew would have to trust the ship the way ancient people trusted land, water, fire, and sky. But unlike land or sky, the ship is not ancient, not self-healing, not vast, and not indifferent in a stable way. It is complex, aging, and made of parts. It can be repaired, but only within limits. It can be designed with redundancy, but redundancy is not immortality. It can protect, but protection must be maintained. Every safe day is an achievement. On Earth, a safe day can feel ordinary. Beyond Neptune, it would be a victory too quiet to celebrate every time. This may be why the outer solar system is so powerful for a calm, terrifying story. It does not need to imagine impossible disasters. It only needs to describe ordinary survival in a place where ordinary survival has no natural foundation. A human being could sleep in a warm cabin while moving through darkness beyond the last major planet, and that peaceful image would already contain fear. The sleep is peaceful because machines are working. The warmth exists because energy is controlled. The silence is calm because nothing has gone wrong. Peace becomes evidence of dependence. That dependence is not shameful. It is what all space travel requires. But the farther out we go, the more dependence becomes the entire structure of life. Near Earth, dependence can be supported from below. In deep space, dependence must support itself. Beyond Neptune, a human mission would be a closed loop inside a larger emptiness, and every loop has to keep closing. Air, water, waste, food, heat, power, sanity, memory, purpose. All of it has to circle back because the outside offers no replacement. A world is a system that supports life without asking permission every second. A spacecraft is a system that must keep earning life. That difference may be the difference between living in a place and surviving in a machine. Beyond Neptune, humans would not really live in space. They would live inside technology that refuses space on their behalf. The walls would say no to vacuum. The insulation would say no to cold. The shielding would say no to radiation. The recycling systems would say no to waste. The navigation would say no to being lost. The crew's discipline would say no to chaos. The mission itself would be a long, organized refusal of the environment outside, and the environment would not fight back like an enemy. It would simply wait. That waiting is what makes it frightening. Space does not need to break the ship quickly. Time can do that. Radiation can do that. Micrometeoroids can do that. Fatigue can do that. Where can do that. Human conflict can do that. Small probabilities, given enough years, become part of the environment. In the outer solar system, danger does not always arrive as an event. Sometimes it accumulates. Distance gives danger time, and time is the one thing the outer solar system has in abundance. This brings the journey back to the human body. The body is warm, wet, pressurized, fragile, social, rhythmic, and adapted to Earth. It needs gravity, or something like it. It needs protection from radiation. It needs cycles of sleep and waking. It needs movement, food, emotional connection, sensory variety, and the feeling that the world around it is not constantly one failure away from killing it. The body is not built for the space beyond Neptune. The mind is not built for it either. But the mind can imagine it, and imagination is enough to feel the terror. Imagine not as fantasy, but as careful awareness. A crew far beyond the last major planet. The sun reduced to a bright point. Earth hidden in the same direction. The Oort cloud still only an idea far ahead. Interstellar space surrounding the journey, and the ship holding all breathable air in its metal body. No planet nearby, no open door, no natural rescue, no landscape that belongs to life, only the ongoing act of survival inside a machine. That is why no human could ever feel completely safe there. They might feel brave, they might feel proud, they might feel calm. They might even feel at home inside the ship after enough time. But complete safety would be almost impossible, because the outside would always remind them that safety is conditional. The ship is safe until it is not. The system works until it does not. The mission continues until something breaks the chain. And beyond Neptune, every chain stretches across distances too large for quick help. That knowledge would never fully disappear. It would sleep in the background, like the comets of the Oort cloud. Quiet, distant, waiting, and from that human fear, the final shape of the journey begins to emerge. The realization that the solar system we know is only a small, bright island inside a much larger dark. Not that there is one monster waiting in the cold, or one violent place where the danger finally reveals itself, but that the familiar solar system is far smaller emotionally than it is physically. The planets we know, the worlds we name, the images we have seen, and the diagrams that first taught us where Earth belongs, they are all centered around the bright inner story. They give the mind a structure. They make the sun feel like home. They make the planets feel like neighbors, even when they are impossibly far apart. But past Neptune, that comfort begins to fail. The old map does not vanish, it expands. It shows that the planets are only the beginning. They are not the whole story. They are the warm core of a system that becomes colder, stranger, and more distant the farther we go. The Kuiper Belt is real. Pluto is real. The heliopause is real. Interstellar space is real. The Oort cloud is real in the sense that it is a reasonable inference from evidence. All of this belongs to our system, and almost none of it feels like a place for us. That contrast is what makes the space beyond Neptune so powerful. It is not completely foreign because it is still connected to the sun. It is not another star system. It is not a distant galaxy. It is still, in a cold astronomical sense, part of the same cosmic home that contains Earth. But emotionally, it is almost unrecognizable. It is home stripped of every comfort we associate with home. No air, no warmth, no rescue, no nearby worlds, no natural shelter, no living surface, no familiar sky. This makes the sun feel different, not less important, more frightening. Because the sun is not only the light over Earth, it is a star with a domain. And most of that domain is not Earth-like. Most of it is hostile, frozen, airless, empty, or unreachable. The warm part of the story is narrow. The bright region where human instincts make sense is small compared with the full reach of the star's influence. Past Neptune, the solar system quietly teaches that habitability is not the default. It is an exception inside a much larger architecture of cold. This is not because the map was foolish. Every map simplifies. A map is a beginning, not a prison. But the outer solar system reminds us that simplified knowledge can become emotional comfort. When the solar system is a line of planets, it seems organized. When the planets end, it seems as if the story should end with them. But the real system continues beyond that line, and what continues is not easily turned into a comforting picture. There are too many distances. There are too many scales that resist human imagination. There are too many ways in which the familiar world becomes a small exception. This is why the space beyond Neptune is not less terrifying when we understand it better. Standing gives names to the regions, explains the forces, reveals the history, and shows that these places are real parts of the sun's family. But understanding also removes false comfort. It tells us Pluto was not the edge. It tells us Neptune was not the ending. It tells us the sun's warmth fades long before the sun's gravity does. It tells us our star has a bubble, and that bubble has a boundary, and beyond that boundary the galaxy waits. Knowledge does not always make the universe smaller. Sometimes it makes the darkness more precise. A precise darkness can be more disturbing than an unknown one. When we know that a spacecraft can travel for decades and still only begin to cross the outer layers, the distance becomes real. When we know the nearest stars remain unreachable on human timescales for our drifting probes, the between becomes real. When we know comets may sleep in a reservoir so distant that we cannot directly see it as a whole, the ghost shell becomes real. The fear becomes quieter but deeper because it is no longer fantasy. The human mind evolved in a world of reachable distances. Even the far horizon belonged to the same Earth. A mountain could be climbed, a sea could be crossed, a continent could be explored. The sky was mysterious, but it was close enough to watch. Space breaks that inheritance. It gives us distances where speed feels slow, where arrival belongs to generations, where boundaries are invisible, and where a whole human life can become a small event inside a journey that continues. Beyond Neptune, this becomes impossible to ignore. We can still turn back toward Earth. We can still feel the warmth of the sun in our memory. We can still name the planets and trace their orbits. But we can no longer pretend that the familiar solar system is the whole solar system. The outer darkness teaches us that the map we carry in our minds is only the first version. The real map is larger, colder, and more difficult to love. And yet it is still our map. It still belongs to the same sun. It still contains our origin. That is the strange, quiet power of the space beyond Neptune. It makes us realize that home is not only the warm blue world where we were born. Home is also the cold places that surround it. Home is the Kuiper Belt, and the heliopause, and the interstellar medium, and the Oort cloud. Home is the long darkness that still belongs to our star, and that darkness is not a separate kingdom. It is the outer face of where we come from. It is the part of home that does not feel like home. It is the part of the solar system that has no air, no warmth, no life, no rescue, and no human meaning except what we give it. But we can give it meaning. We can study it. We can name its regions. We can send machines into it. We can listen to its signals. We can imagine what it would be like to travel there. We can use its coldness to understand our own warmth. We can use its distance to appreciate how rare our place is. We can use its silence to hear how extraordinary it is that we exist at all. This is the final lesson of the journey. The space beyond Neptune is terrifying because it shows how small the familiar solar system is compared with the full reach of the sun, and how small the sun's reach is compared with the galaxy. But it is also humbling because it shows that even from a small island, the mind can travel outward. We cannot make the outer darkness warm. We cannot make the stars close. We cannot make interstellar space into a road built for us, but we can understand a little. We can listen. We can send small machines. We can look back inward and recognize what we have. The final lesson is not only that the space beyond Neptune is terrifying, it is that the terror comes from truth. The truth that most of the solar system is not made for life. The truth that home has edges we cannot feel from Earth. The truth that distance is not empty but powerful. The truth that the sun itself becomes a faint point if you go far enough. The truth that beyond the last major planet, the universe stops trying to fit inside human comfort. And still, that truth is worth seeing. Because when Neptune fades behind the journey, and the sun becomes only a distant star, and the outer regions stretch into darkness, one thing becomes clearer than before. The warm, breathing world we came from is not just another point on a map. It is the small, bright island. And beyond it, the dark is almost endless. Thank you for watching this calm journey into the terrifying space beyond Neptune, and into the strange outer regions where the solar system becomes colder, larger, and far less familiar than it first appears. If you enjoyed this documentary, Subscribe for more quiet space stories like this. Leave a like if you want more deep journeys into the mysteries of the universe, and write in the comments where you are watching from. Tonight, you are watching the Sleepy Cosmic Lens channel, talking about why the space beyond Neptune is terrifying. Sleep well and keep looking up. Good night.